Welcome to October's Tech of the Month, where we have a lot of news to get through. We have some fancy tech from the World Championships, we have Garmin updates, and we have new bikes from the likes of Look, Giant and BMC. And we even have some wider industry news. Before we do get into the news, we wanted to pay tribute to Muriel for her. We're recording this video on Tuesday, the 1st of October, so the news of her passing is still pretty fresh. In a press release issued on Friday afternoon, the UCI confirmed that the 18-year-old had died after she suffered a serious head injury in a crash last Thursday. Now, Muriel finished second in both the junior road race and time trial at the Swiss National Championships this year, and she finished 44th in the junior time trial at the Worlds on Tuesday. She rode for BIXS Performance Race Team, which is a Swiss mountain bike squad, and also competed in cyclocross, in which she also finished second at the Swiss Nationals this season. Now, it goes here without saying, but everyone here at Cycling Weekly would like to express their deepest condolences. It's an utterly tragic loss of life and something that we hope never happens again.
Now then, big news coming out of America, because after some speculation, specialist bike retailer The Pros Closet confirmed last week that it will shutter all operations in October. What initially appeared as an end-of-season sale on their website was soon outed on social media as a going-out-of-business sale, with discounts reaching 75% across the entire range, including bikes, apparel, wheels and kit.
That's a lot. So I think for those that don't know though, The Pros Closet is they professionalise the business of buying and selling used bicycles, but they put quite a big emphasis on the inspection and the quality of what they were selling. So I think there was just a lot more inherent trust within that business. And they saw a massive boom around COVID, didn't they?
And after that COVID bubble, unfortunately, as so many have done, they've suffered from sort of lack of sales and therefore a lack of cash flow. But yeah, exactly right, Sam. It was Nick Martin that actually set up the business back in 2006 as a personal venture, just buying and selling sort of used cycling kit. But yeah, it's a real shame that this one's gone, I think, more than others, because as we were just talking now about the fact that it's really got a focus on sustainability and making use of old kit, rather than just getting new all the time. Exactly.
I think in a world where we're always driven by more and new, I think it's really nice to have a trusted source where you can buy secondhand things that are genuinely really good quality. And I don't think it's going to be too long until this gap in the market gets filled once again, because clearly there's a demand for it. I think potentially what the downfall of the Pros Closet was this kind of over leveraging of their business around a time which was an anomaly, a peak in the market. But maybe there's space for something which is a bit smaller and a bit more sustainable to hopefully come back in the future. From one big retailer to another, there's news coming out of the UK-based Halfords retail chain, and they're making a bit of a pivot in who they are trying to target in the market. So they're making a really big push now towards the premium end of the market, because they have said that that is where they believe the growth lies, and that's where the customer demand is. And they have said they're going to increase the number of premium bikes it offers by 60%, and the number of premium e-bikes offered by 300%. So they are making a big old push in this space.
Yeah, well, I think the first question there is, what does Halfords actually consider to be premium? Because a lot of people might think that actually what Specialized, for example, considers to be premium is going to be really different to a premium lock you might get in a local bike shop or in a retailer such as Halfords or Amazon, for example.
I don't think we're going to start seeing 12 grand bikes being sold by Halfords. No. That would be insane. Now we're going to focus on those mechanical bikes rather than the e-bikes. And those mechanical bikes are going to be coming from in-house brand Boardman, and they're going to be looking around that £1,000 plus kind of benchmark, which, when you really think about it, is actually quite cheap. If you think that a lot of the premium bikes generally from other big brands start at around the £3,000 to £4,000 mark and up, that £1,000 bracket looks incredibly good value. We will see bikes that come in above that £1,000 mark. Of course, there's going to be things in around that £2,000 and £3,000 mark, depending on spec. But I think already it's looking like quite good perceived value.
Yeah, and exactly right, as you say, that sort of £1,000, what this potentially more says is that Halfords isn't going to be making so many £300 or £400 hybrids, as opposed to, particularly that they're going to come and challenge the SL8 or the Van Rysel. RCR Pro, for example. But still very interesting that that's where they see the growth, as opposed to the value-driven market, even in tough times.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's another interesting angle here as well, because we've been closely monitoring what's been happening at Decathlon and Van Rysel for a really long time. It really makes me wonder, is Halfords going to make a play for that same kind of marketing angle as Van Rysel by kind of creating Boardman to be this more premium, you know, really build up the brand value of Boardman within the space? I can really see that happening, because I think they've looked at Van Rysel and thought, we can do that too.
That's worked. Yeah, 100%, because if we go back a few years when, you know, Van Rysel, the brand, as a brand sort of didn't even exist, you just had B2 in the Tri-Band 520, for example. It takes time to build a brand's value, as Sam said, and then every year, you know, bring more features, and still keep that cost nice and low. And then before you know it, you know, say 6-7 years down the line, you can have the same sort of perceived brand value, but you don't even have to particularly undercut your rivals by that much. So yeah, I do wonder if they're going to sort of build up quality, build up the price slowly, and then in 5 years' time, they could be sort of a sort of rival to Decathlon.
Yeah, I'd wonder actually if they would try and make as big a splash as Van Rysel by sponsoring a World Tour team, because that I think that brings a lot of credibility and gravitas to a brand, and also just draws a lot of eyes to it as well. So, I mean, the only thing there is obviously that Halfords is just a UK brand, but it'll be very interesting to see how they move forwards with it. Now, we did actually speak to some local bike shops about what they thought about Halfords' move into this space, and local bike shops seemingly don't appear to be too worried. They are still very much of the mindset that, well, Halfords does come with a reputation. The staff maybe aren't always the most knowledgeable, and generally, if a customer is looking for a more premium bike, it's probably because they've had one before from Halfords and are then looking to kind of graduate up the chain and kind of maybe get into a better, well-known brand. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think, though, you can ever bet against the marketing power of a brand like Halfords, though, and how much money they can pump into a campaign.
100%. Now then, back to the world of tech, good and proper, because Garmin has released some major software updates across its smartwatches and edge cycling computers. The first one to note is Garmin Coach functionality. Now, Garmin says these updates are part of the brand's commitment to helping their customers achieve their goals. So what exactly is new? Well, now, as well as having access to a whole host of pre-built plans for riders of all levels, Garmin Coach will pull data from recovery metrics on your devices that can adapt your training plans day by day.
So do you think that the insight is actually going to be useful for riders?
Good question. Now, I think in theory, the philosophy is fantastic. Absolutely, it's going to be really helpful, particularly for those of us who are trying to fit training in around full-time jobs. You wake up one day, you know, your heart rate variability is off, you feel maybe like you could be a bit under the weather. It's nice to have sort of some advice on maybe whether to train a little bit easier, or feeling fresh, you can train harder. However, the Garmin recovery metric has historically been, I would say, almost a laughing stock. Quite often, you know, you think you've done a relatively easy or standard 3-hour ride, for example, and Garmin will tell you to recover for 2 or 3 days. Sometimes I've had it. So it will be interesting to see if they've changed that around.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've always found is when I turn on my Edge 1040 Solar, and you know how you get the suggested rides, if I'm in a block of training, every time I turn that thing on, it always says, have a rest ride. And it's usually like, have an hour and a half easy. I'm like, how are you ever expecting me to get faster? I don't understand. I'm not sure if it's going to be great, but to be fair, we need to see what this update has actually brought and then see maybe if those recommendations have actually improved.
And also, it's good to note as well, this is the tip of the iceberg. I think these are actually, what we're going to come on to is the more interesting updates by far.
So tell us.
So alongside the new Garmin Coach functionality, the brand has also released a few other tech-based features, starting with Garmin Share. So Share functionality will allow you to quickly share saved locations, courses and workouts with nearby compatible devices. We're talking, again, edge cycling computers and smartwatches alike. And this next one I think is actually a really cool feature. So there's now a new road hazard feature which is coming. So what this allows you to do is report hazards such as potholes, oil spills, I don't know, sort of stranded vehicles, whatever, to other Garmin Edge users in real time, much like Waze, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely fantastic. In the UK, our roads are really bad. You don't know if there's going to be, for example, if there's a broken down lorry on a tight corner on a small road. That is really, really valuable information to share with other riders. One reservation, though, is I would imagine that is going to have a detrimental effect on battery life. So it'd be interesting to see how that is handled. Now, the other main feature is the group ride function. So that's going to incorporate features such as live share tracking with other members of your group and in-ride leaderboards. So if you want to make your club run competitive, you can now do so.
That's interesting. Those are some good updates, actually. And I think the road hazard sharing, I think that's really important. I think what I'd be keen to know, though, is how you'd actually input that data whilst you're riding. I'm just thinking, like, in winter, usually when hazards can be that bit more dangerous with either like potholes that are full of water, or if you've got oil on the road or cars, whatever, you're maybe not always going to want to be taking your hands off the bars and then fiddling around with the computer, especially if you've got gloves on.
Correct,
so if there was an integration where you could use your Shimano Di2 satellite buttons to, I don't know, do like a double click or something and then it inputs something without you having to take your hands off the bars, that would be quite good. But as a concept, I think absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's something that we're all really looking forward to testing out on the road and seeing just how well it can really integrate into your sort of normal day-to-day riding.
Last weekend, we saw an incredible victory by Tadej Pogačar at the World Champs. He dominated at the race, attacked at 100 kilometres out, and then went on to win and take home the title, meaning he has completed the Triple Crown, which is Giro, Tour and World Champs in the same year. Only done twice before by Stephen Roche in 1987 and Eddie Merckx in 1974. So it's a pretty elite club to be a part of. But I think what's also pretty cool is the bike he did it on, because Colnago and Tadej worked together to create this special edition bike, and it was of course the V4 RS that he usually rides. But it was this custom colourway to kind of signify all of his success that he's had, actually as his entire time as a professional cyclist. So there was gold, pink, blue, red and white and polka dots all across the frame. And Colnago says that the paint job recalls the work produced by the pop art movement born in the mid-1950s in the USA and UK, which Pogačar is said to be a big fan of. Now, all of those colours do actually represent something. So that gold tinted yellow is, of course, for his Tour de France wins. The pink is on there for his leader's jersey at the Giro d'Italia. The blue represents his successes at Paris-Nice and Tirreno Adriatico. And the white represents all of his best young rider classifications at the Tour. There's also red polka dots in there that are included to represent the King of the Mountains jerseys, and there's also some bronze in there which is for his Tokyo Olympics medal and his previous World Championship bronze.
Yeah, that is a lot of winning, isn't it? And I actually had a look the other day to try and count up how many victories he's had on a V4 RS. Of course, he's had loads of different bikes over the years, but he started riding that bike about midway through the 2022 season. And since then, this is excluding time trials, but it is including overall victories as well as stages in the Tour de France, for example, 55 victories.
Wow,
which is just a joke. In fact, the Colnago V4 RS is the second most successful bike this year, and it's ridden by UAE Emirates, both the men's and women's squad. The Specialized SLA is still on top, but it sponsors so many more teams. So a real tribute to the success of that team, I think.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely silly. I think it's amazing to have one man be essentially solely responsible for how successful a bike is. That's absolutely incredible. But yeah, so I mean, this build that they all collaborated on together featured so many nice little touches. So Colnago actually collaborated with fellow Italian brand Carbon Tie to produce some custom chain rings for the chain set, because Colnago can be seen within the chainring itself. And then they also fitted the Superlight through axles that were anodized gold, of course, but were also etched with Colnago TP carbon tie, which again, just a really nice touch. It's these tiny little bits of attention to detail, which I think are really nice. And the same treatment was also given to the bottle cage bolts. So they really went to town on this thing. And then you can also see on the wheels that the custom colorway was also then done on the wheel decals. And then finally, the bike was completed with a limited edition Pro logo saddle. And yeah, I think this as a thing is absolutely incredible. And it was amazing to see him win the world champs on that bike. It was, yeah, truly remarkable. And if you did want to buy this bike, I know you're about to ask, Joe.
Yes.
It's going to be available between the 26th of September to the 14th of October. The price in euros, 17,200. It's a lot of money. In the UK, that roughly translates to just over £14,300.
I'm going to jump in there because I went on the website yesterday and it is available now with the price in pounds for £17,000.
Oh, it's £17,000.
£17,000, and you have to put a £1,000 holding deposit down, which is refundable, you'll be glad to know. So
Wow.
if you do want to head over to the Colnago website.
Wow, that's incredible. That is insane. Well, I mean, that euro price roughly converts to just over $19,000, but potentially there's going to be a price posted for those very soon as well. Yeah, incredible thing. I think it's one of those, I mean, it's going to be a small pool of customers for that bike, but
it is.
What a remarkable thing just to exist. As promised at the top of this video, we have some new bikes. Now, we've got them from Look, Giant and BMC. We're going to start with that Look because it has released the new E765 road bike and gravel bike as well. But we're going to talk about the road bike because we like road bikes. It's quite an interesting thing because it's an e-road bike, as I said, but it also has a claimed weight of 12.9 kilos, which is incredibly light. But then they've also incorporated a new motor, which has made it more powerful, but has also given it a longer range. So it has a claimed range of 120 kilometers, which for I think most people.
For a road bike, that's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, you know, we're quite familiar with sort of hybrid bikes topping out sort of even a bit beyond that. But generally speaking, they are obviously far heavier and often have a larger battery capacity. But tell us about this new motor. So what have they gone with?
So they've gone with the Fazua Ride 60 motor. Now, Fazua is a brand which has been in the e-bike game for a really long time, and our friends over at MBR, they've been using Fazua motors for a really long time and they're big fans. So I think it's really trusted tech, and Fazua is actually owned by Porsche as well. So there's some really good tech going on there. Now this new motor delivers 250 watts of power and 60 Newton meters of torque. It's integrated down into the bottom bracket and is powered by a 430 watt hour battery that's in the down tube. Now previously that battery was actually removable. Now it's fully locked in.
So you said this is quite a light bike.
Yeah.
How much does the motor system itself actually weigh?
Yeah, so the motor part of it is 4.2 kilos, which is actually a pretty sizable chunk of that overall claimed 12.9 kilos.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show that, you know, you take away all of that e-bike tech, you've actually got a relatively lightweight bike sitting underneath there, which is quite cool. Now, the bike itself has 45 millimeters of tyre clearance, which is a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot of space. And the frame can also be fitted with a suspension fork to provide for 50 millimeters of travel. So it's actually a really versatile platform that they've created. And yeah, if you look at the overall spec of the bike, away from the kind of e-bike gubbins, you've got a SRAM Rival Explore group set, which is a 1x configuration, a 44-tooth chainring and a 1044 cassette. The wheels are carbon, along with the cockpit, along with the seat posts and saddle. Those are all Look branded, and the tyres that are fitted are 32mm Hutchinson sectors.
Nice, so a really solid spec. What's the price?
It comes in at just shy of £8,500 or $9,500, or the same in euros, €8,500. Okay. So it's a lot of money, that's without doubt.
It does also sound like a fair amount of bike though, doesn't it? They've definitely gone for the premium market here rather than sort of cutting costs.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think that this is actually, in some people's eyes, this might actually be an easier to justify expense, because where you can buy bikes for £12,000, at least this you get a battery and a motor.
Yeah.
Now, from one e-bike to another, but from a big brand, again.
Yes. So Giant has also released two new e-bike ranges, the Defy Advanced E Plus Elite and the Live Avail E Plus Elite. Now, as the names suggest, both of these are sort of built off of the basis of the brand's sort of best-selling road bike models, the Defy and the Avail. Now, Giant are hoping that by borrowing features from their road bikes and integrating it with motorised pedal support, and I'll get this right, they're going to bring all the thrills of traditional road riding, but with the power to ride farther and faster.
some of this marketing speak absolutely grates on me, to be honest.
A little bit cheesy, but there you go. So down to the nitty gritty, it has a new Sync Drive Move Plus motor system. That weighs 1.7 kilos, and that is paired up with a 400 watt-hour battery, which is integrated into the frame, which weighs 2.3 kilos. So 4 kilo total sort of addition, which is a nice little interesting comparison there to the Fazua system. So this is a hub-mounted system as well, it's worth noting, and it only creates 30 Newton meters of torque, though Giant claims that that is said to equate for 75 Newton meters if it were a mid-drive system. Now, I think there's caveats there depending on your gearing. It's worth noting that will be for a specific chain set and specific gearing, so worth bearing in mind. But basically, it's powerful enough. It's sort of the main thing there. Now, like pretty much every e-bike, this is going to be capped at 25 kilometers an hour here in Europe. That's the pedal assist. 32 in Canada and 45 kilometers an hour in the US. The bike is also controlled very simply just with an inlaid sort of button on the top tube. Now that just allows you to cycle through all the different modes without sort of a head unit style like some e-bikes have. Generally those are found more on sort of commuting bikes. Now, in terms of price, full bikes for both the Liv and the Giant will start from $6,500 or £5,999, and that's for the AR models. The AR Elite bikes go all the way up to $11,000 or £9,999. So once again, very premium here. But I have to say, having a look at the photos so far, they actually look really quite smart, I think.
I think both the Look and the Giant look really nice, and we were discussing this earlier. I'm really keen to spend a lot more time on an e-road bike to see how it actually performs out in the wild.
Of course he is, yeah.
As I approach 30, I think I'm very keen to see what it feels like and what that assistance level feels like, because I think the other thing to bear in mind is that the experience we have here in Europe is also going to be very different to how those bikes are going to be perceived in the US and Canada.
No, I couldn't agree more on that, actually. And the other thing that actually Giant have said with this new motor system, they've made an effort to sort of design the power transfer so it's meant to be quite smooth. So instead of sometimes with e-bikes you get that real sort of jerk from a standstill, for example, they're trying to minimize that, and you can actually customize the power sort of delivery and the eco modes with the Ride Control app as well. So yeah, I think you're right. It will actually be really interesting to get this out on the road and see how does it really feel.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to ditch the motors now because we've got something creme de la creme, super fancy. Sam, tell us about it.
Yes, so BMC recently released a Teammachine R MPc. Now, MPc stands for Masterpiece, of course.
Ooh, yes.
More marketing chat, we love it. Now, this is actually quite an impressive thing that BMC have done, because what they've taken is they've taken their Teammachine mold and then they've kind of allowed the engineers to make the best of the best without any kind of financial constraints. In some ways, it didn't need to make sense for the mass market, but what it was an opportunity for the engineers to show what they can do with carbon fiber. So BMC took they went down a no expense spared kind of approach to this build, and there's a quote here from their head of R&D, which I think puts it really nicely. The Masterpiece production method allows us to reach another level of precision when it comes to carbon fiber placement and alignment. Each carbon fiber strand aids in tailoring the structure and ride characteristics of the frame, so you get exactly the riding behavior and performance we, the engineers, envisioned. According to BMC, the carbon layup is so precise that there is zero excess material, which
that's very impressive, isn't it, for carbon fiber
very impressive, yeah. And they say that it leaves a surface so clean that it requires no rework. And to show it off, BMC have left the frame completely untreated, so you can actually see what has gone into making that frame possible. And I will say, I think that bike looks absolutely spectacular. I think it's a great thing that they've done, and I think it's more thinking about this thing in the right kind of way. The way we have to look at this bike, because I think it's a proven platform. There's a lot of people that love the Teammachine. It's a great bike. I think what this is turning a bike into a Ferrari.
Yeah, I think actually the best way to look at this is, and what quite a lot of people don't understand about carbon fiber manufacturing, is carbon fiber can get thrown around as like a term where it sounds like it's incredible high tech, but there's carbon fibers in so many things, but the manufacturing process is really, really different. So in mass-produced carbon fiber in the bike industry, commonly you'll find a lot of like ripples, for example, or air bubbles, only tiny and not not unsafe at all. But if that was in aerospace quality control, it would never get through. So actually, you know, when we hear about the Hope Lotus bike, for example, costing £80,000, that's because everything is hand laid up by an absolute expert in that field, and therefore the quality control is so much higher. And if the quality control is higher, then you can push the limits of what the material can do more. And I think, if I'm right in saying, that's kind of what this is, a little bit more. And it's reflected in the price.
Well, yeah, so the price itself is kind of landing around that €9,000 Euro mark.
For a frame set.
For a frame set, not a full build, so it's a lot of money. But this bike isn't for everyone. It's been created in limited numbers. It's a thing of beauty. It's kind of something you dream of aspiring owning maybe one day. I mean, I aspire of owning a Ferrari one day. Whether that will happen is yet to be seen, but I think it's one of those poster bikes. It demonstrates what we are capable of, what the engineers are capable of, when they're not constrained by the limitations of product managers and, you know, what the accountants say a bike has to sell for. Yeah. And I think for that reason, that's why I actually really appreciate what BMC has done.
Yeah.
And lastly, just the look of the bike, the way they finished that bike looks absolutely gorgeous. It's not shouting about anything more than what it is. It's just super classy, and it's a thing of absolute beauty. Let us know down below what you think of the BMC. If you had the money, what would you rather go for? The BMC frame or Pogačar's World Champs bike?